You have 48 hours to join our HOA or face property seizure. That's the first thing she said, right there at the edge of my porch, standing perfectly straight with a stack of fake government papers and a smile so practiced it made my blood run cold. Her name was Victoria Vance, and in that moment, if I'm being honest, I nearly laughed in her face. I mean, come on, my busted-up, so-called ranch violating community safety standards? But let me tell you, Victoria wasn't joking. I barely had time to process it before she dialed her phone. And not 5 hours later, a SWAT team rolled up at dawn, flashlights blazing, rifles aimed, my pregnant wife, and 2 kids screaming as they dragged us out and forced a pen into my hand, telling me to sign the HOA membership papers or else. Now, a lot of folks would have run, but not me. See, Victoria made the worst mistake of her life. She underestimated an ex-military welder who's just plain too stubborn to quit. What she didn't know, what almost nobody knew, was that my so-called worthless 20-acre patch of Texas dirt had secrets worth killing for. And the HOA? That was just the opening act. So, before I go any further, let me know where you're watching from. I'm Ryan Foster, and this is the story of how my family went from breakfast in peace to the center of the nastiest property war you've ever heard, and how sometimes your worst enemy is the one with the nicest smile. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday morning, one of those perfect early March days. Sun shining, birds making more noise than they ought to. I was in my workshop, torch in hand, welding up a new gate for a guy down in town. Sarah, my wife, she was inside, frying up eggs for Leo and Clara, who were just 8 and 6 back then. We bought this ranch 3 years ago, used my VA loan to swing it, and ever since, felt like we'd finally carved out a piece of life nobody could touch. Or so I thought. That's when I heard it. Tires crunching up my gravel drive. But not just any tires. These were clean, expensive city tires. And out steps this woman, straight out of a home design magazine. Blonde hair done just so, a linen suit worth more than my truck, and that smile. "You must be Ryan Foster," she chirped, hand outstretched, and honestly, it was all I could do not to wipe my hand off on my jeans. "I'm Victoria Vance, president of the New Canyon View HOA. Been looking forward to meeting you and your lovely family." Now, my hackles were up from the start. I told her, polite but clear, "Ma'am, we're not part of any HOA. We bought in before the subdivision, and the law says we don't have to play by your rules." For just a second, that smile flickered, something cold slipped through, but then she doubled down. "Oh, but that's exactly why I'm here, Ryan," she said, tapping away on her fancy tablet. "For the safety and security of the community, we really need all ranch properties to join up." The way she said safety and security. Let's just say I've heard threats dressed up prettier than that back in the service. While she was talking, her eyes were everywhere. She clocked the new welding barn I'd just put up, eyed the water well behind the house like it was a gold mine, and kept glancing at the updated electric I'd wire myself. I tried to de-escalate. "We keep to ourselves, keep things up, don't need help." But she just nodded, wider smile, shark eyes. "You have to think of the bigger picture, Ryan. Emergencies happen. Safety issues impact the whole community." Then she started flipping through photos on her tablet. Fences, gardens, lawns, rattling off violations like she was reading from a police blotter. Sarah came out, dish towel in hand, and Victoria pounced. Suddenly, she's asking how deep our well is, if we've ever had soil tests done, if we've noticed any geological oddities lately. I shot Sarah a look, and she gave me one right back, both of us thinking, what the heck is this really about? After a good 20 minutes of this, Victoria handed me a huge packet of legalese and said, "I'll give you 48 hours to make the right decision. And you should check Section 12B of the safety requirements. It's very educational." She turned, flashed another too-white grin, and drove off in her spotless white SUV. That night, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table, paperwork spread everywhere, kids glued to cartoons. Every clause was more alarming than the last. Emergency assessments, expedited compliance, seizure procedures that sounded more like a raid than a neighborhood dispute. Sarah's got a nose for research, used to do journalism before the kids, and after an hour poking around online, she says, "Ryan, this HOA barely exists. No website, no real records, just an LLC filing from 6 months back. And then at the bottom of the so-called official letter, I spotted something that made my skin crawl. A signature. And not just any signature. I'd seen that handwriting before, 20 years ago, on a letter that wrecked my life. The next day, I couldn't shake it. Sarah kept digging and said, "Ryan, these folks have already seized 4 properties for safety violations, and this HOA was set up just 6 months ago by Victoria and a bunch of shell companies." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Some guy in a cheap uniform and a knockoff badge shows up, clipboard out. "Mr. Foster, I'm here for your daily compliance inspection. As a non-member, you're subject to daily fines until you comply." 10 minutes later, he hands me a $500 ticket for improper integration, then hands Sarah another $500 for her garden not being pre-approved. When we pointed out we weren't members, he just shrugged. All properties within the HOA boundary are subject to compliance. That $1,000 in fines before lunch, and the realization hit. Victoria was absolutely serious. I went to see my neighbor, Mrs. Davidson. She just shook her head. "Be careful, Ryan." She tried the same thing with me. Fines every day, threats, then talk of foreclosure. I caved after 2 weeks. But Tom Hollis down by the creek. He fought, called lawyers, then died in a car accident on a dry road he'd driven for 40 years. And Bill Jensen, house fire, after refusing the HOA. He was an electrician, Ryan. Something isn't right. I drove home, head spinning, and when I walked in, Sarah had the papers out again. Look at Section 12B. Any property with more than $5,000 in fines is a provisional member and subject to seizure, even if you never sign. We were already at $1,000, with $500 more every day. For a week, it was nonstop harassment. Inspections, fines for laundry lines, for the color of our mailbox, even for the type of gravel in the drive. But Sarah was connecting the dots. She'd mapped out every property Victoria's crew had seized, each one forming a circle around a central spot. Every one of these is on high ground, near water, or has some kind of resource, she said, slapping down geological surveys. And here's the kicker. The whole area sits on top of a massive rare earth mineral deposit. We're talking tens of millions, Ryan. Our ranch was right in the center. That afternoon, I walked the back fence line. There, holes poorly filled, bits of coarse sampling equipment buried. Someone had been testing our land, and Victoria's SUV was parked nearby, her eyes glued to binoculars. I walked up, snapped photos. She sauntered over, casual as you please. "Find anything interesting back there?" And when I confronted her with the photos, she just smiled wider. "Routine environmental monitoring. You make this a lot easier if you joined up, Ryan. The alternative isn't pleasant for anyone." That night, a sheriff's deputy named Jesse Ruiz knocked, asked to talk off the record. "I've been looking into Victoria Vance. The real person doesn't exist before 18 months ago, but there's a Veronica Rodriguez, Army discharge in '04 for theft, involved in property schemes across several states. Pattern is always the same. Fake HOAs, pressure veterans, then seize and resell." He flipped open his notebook. "At least 15 veterans have lost property this way. Some have died under suspicious circumstances." It hit me all at once. The handwriting, the cold eyes. Veronica Rodriguez had been my girlfriend back in my last year in the Army, the one who stole from me and vanished with classified info. Now she was back. New name, new face, same grudge. This wasn't just a scam. It was revenge. The next morning, it wasn't just the inspector. Now there was a convoy of squad cars, SWAT van, tactical officers stacking up in my yard. Veronica, yeah, I stopped calling her Victoria by then, walked up, court documents in hand. The SWAT captain barked, "Mr. Foster, you're under investigation for threats against community safety." Veronica told me, "Just sign, pay the fines, and this all goes away." Sarah clutched the kids. "Don't try to be a hero, Ryan. We protect the kids, whatever happens." I signed. What else could I do? And as I did, Veronica's purse spilled out. There on the floor was an old Army photo of me and her, a red X over my face, and on the back, in that same handwriting, a 4-step plan, create HOA, force membership, seize property, eliminate Ryan Foster. That night, Deputy Ruiz called. Federal investigators are moving in. She's got a pattern across 6 states, and your evidence is the missing link. At the emergency HOA meeting, Veronica tried to paint me as a terrorist, but Sarah, Mrs. Davidson, Deputy Ruiz, and half the neighborhood stood up. Photographs, evidence, everything. Veronica finally dropped the act, snarling at me in front of everyone. "You're a loser, Ryan." Always have been. But her victory was short-lived. She waived the signed contract, saying, "Section 12B means your land's mine in 48 hours. But Sarah found a loophole. Section 15C. Any seizure under emergency powers had to be ratified by a majority vote of all real members, not fake shell companies. There weren't any real members. Veronica's whole HOA was a sham. That afternoon, FBI agents rolled up to her office and arrested her on a laundry list of federal charges: fraud, extortion, targeting veterans. Watching them slap the cuffs on Veronica's wrists, after everything she'd done, was the sweetest moment of my life. 6 months later, Sarah gave birth to our 3rd kid, a little girl we named Hope. Veronica got the max, 25 years in federal prison. Turns out, her scams stretched across the country. Dozens of victims, millions at stake. But here's the truth. Justice isn't just about what happens in court. It's about standing up, even when you're scared, even when you feel like you're all alone, and making sure people like Veronica Rodriguez can't hurt anyone else. We're still here on the ranch, and we're not going anywhere. The mineral rights mean we're set for life. The real lesson? Bullies might win for a little while, but in the end, they always go down, especially when you've got your family, your community, and the truth on your side. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think 25 years was enough? Or should they have thrown away the key? Ever faced off with an HOA or been targeted for your property? Drop your story below. I want to hear how you stood up, too. And if you believe justice still matters in this country, hit that like, share this story, and let's make sure nobody else gets steamrolled by some grudge-holding con artist ever again.